I got a new lens. Oh, it's so bright. Alright, we're gonna need two things to make this video. We're gonna need a second camera, and we're gonna need to make some adjustments to the lighting. Let's get undone. Gerald undone. He's crazy. Alright, that is better. What's happening, Donk Squad? I'm Gerald Undone, and today we are talking about the Sigma 16mm f1.4 for micro four thirds like the GH5. So this is a much faster lens, which means that it has a larger aperture, which means that it lets more light in, which means that it's much brighter. So I've got a light setup now that I can control with the remote and tone the power way down. I'm only running at like 18% power now, because the other light I had was fixed bulbs and it's just one strength. So, and I wanted to run this lens at 1.4, f1.4, its widest aperture, in order to really test it out, test it wide open. There's only so many things that you can do with a camera when you're recording video. You can, change the ISO, you can change the aperture. But if you want to shoot something wide open because you want to test it wide open, then you can really only lower the ISO. And right now I'm shooting with HLG, that's the profile on my GH5, and that means that the lowest that I can set the ISO is 400. So I can't make it any darker by lowering the ISO from there. And you don't want to mess with the shutter speed too much, because generally with video you want to aim somewhere around 180 degree shutter angle. So for you photogs, for 23.98 frames per second, that's about 1/50 shutter speed. So unless I'm going to put a neutral density filter on, I can't really make it much darker. So that's why I had to change the lighting. But luckily this is a controlled light environment, so I can change it if I want to. But if we were outside, we would have to use an ND filter, which I'm going to talk a little bit about an ND filter a little bit later on in this video. But anyway, faster lens. Now I'm not trying to say that brighter is a bad thing. Quite the opposite. Brighter is a great problem to have, because sometimes you're going to be shooting in areas where you can't control the lighting as much, or you're not going to get as much light in. Think, I don't know, a wedding photographer. And in that case, the faster glass that you have, you're going to get a lot more advantage out of that, because you can just open up that aperture and get a lot more light in and be able to take much more advantage of the scene than if you try to get everybody to stop while you set up your studio lights. Sometimes that's not a thing, right? So brighter is better, definitely. That's a huge advantage. All right, so I'm not much of a professional lens reviewer, but I'm just going to give you sort of my first impressions. I've used a lot of lenses, but I don't have advanced testing techniques or anything like that. So I'll just tell you my first impressions, and we'll go from there. So as far as build quality goes, I think it feels really, really good. It's dust and splash proof. It has a lens hood included. It's made by Sigma, so it means it comes with a 7-year warranty. My first impression of the image quality is that it's very sharp, and I don't notice any sort of issues in the corners, resolution power compared to the workhorse lens that I've been using now, which is the 12-35 f2.8 from Panasonic. But when adjusting exposure to compensate between the two lenses, I can say that the Sigma lens came in around 2 full stops brighter than the 12-35 2.8. When I set the 12-35 2.8 at about 1600 ISO, I can achieve a pretty much equal exposure at 400 ISO with the Sigma 16 1.4. So that's huge. Now the Sigma doesn't have image stabilization. It's not built into the lens. Now the body, obviously the GH5, it has in-body image stabilization. But when you use that 12-35 2.8 from Panasonic, the version 2, you can activate dual IS, the image stabilization in the lens, image stabilization of the body. They work together and they communicate, and you get this super awesome dual IS. Now I did a couple rough image stabilization checks. They're really just sort of like me walking around looking at things, and I could notice at this focal length that the Sigma was a little bit shakier, just a little bit, but not a big deal. I think it's because it's 16 mil, so for full frame users, that's a 32mm equivalent. That's still pretty wide, and the wider you shoot, the more stable it will appear. Now, I think because the 12 to 35 can go to 35, which is like 70 mils, if we were comparing this to some 70 mil lens, then I think having the stabilization on the lens is going to make a big difference, because now you're getting more into the telephoto kind of aspect of it. But at 16 mils, at 32 full frame, it's not that much shakier, and it doesn't weigh that much more. Some people complain about the weight that I read. Compared to the 12-35, I would say, you know, only weighs like just a little bit more. And we're talking small body, small. It's not going to throw. I don't think it's going to throw off if you guys use like cranes or some kind of, you know, 3-axis gimbals. I don't think it's going to change the game that much. I think that it'll be fine. So stabilization is really not much of an issue. You know, it'd be great if it had lens stabilization, but I don't really think it needs it for this particular lens. Now the filter size is different, and I didn't think of this until a bit of an afterthought, but the 12 to 35 is a 58 millimeter thread. So that means the size, the diameter of a filter that you can buy, what's the diameter of that to screw on? A different thread size means you have to buy different filters usually. So it's a 58 millimeter. Now the Sigma is a 67 millimeter. And what's unfortunate about this is I have a pretty good variable neutral density filter for my 12 to 35. I have a 58 millimeter Hoya variable ND. Sometimes variable NDs get a bad rap. I think the variable ND from Hoya is fantastic. I don't find it impacts the color very much at all. I love how many, I think it goes from like 1 to 9 stops or something. There's a great range on it. It's fantastic when you're outside shooting for like what we were saying earlier. What are you gonna do? You're gonna tell the sun to turn down? You can't adjust your shutter speed. You wanna shoot wide open and your ISO is already as far down as it goes. You need to pop an ND on, and having that variable ND so you can just like dial it in is a great feature. But I thought, damn it, you know, these NDs, they cost quite a bit of money, and to not be able to use it on the lens was going to be a pretty big bummer. But I thought while I was at the camera store, I would try out a step down ring. So the way that step rings work is you're able to screw on another thread onto your lens that changes the size of the socket thread. So if a step up ring, for instance, you would screw a 67 millimeter ring onto your lens, and then it would have a larger opening for maybe a 77 millimeter, so then you could screw in a 77 millimeter filter. This is usually the way that it's done because it's much easier to shoot a smaller lens through a bigger filter because it doesn't cause any problems of things reaching into the lens. Now that was what I was worried about, because I have a 58 millimeter filter. If I put that over top of a 67 millimeter lens, I'm sort of inside the lens. I figured I would be able to see the filter or at least vignette into it. But rather than just buy another filter, I would give it a try, because step down rings, they're called, when you step down from a 67 mil down to 58, they're significantly cheaper. For instance, I think the next size for the variable ND filter, you're looking at close to $200 Canadian. A step down ring is like $10. So if you can get a step down ring to make both your lenses work, you have a $200 filter for both lenses with only spending $10 rather than spending $200 twice. So I gave it a try. Put the 67 down to 58 step down ring on the lens, and then put the variable ND filter on. I thought, let's see how bad the vignetting is. Let's see how much of a black circle it creates. And I am ecstatic to say none. So my guess with this, my guess as to why does this happen, because I was so expecting there to be a vignette, is I think maybe because Sigma makes this lens for both APS-C cameras for Sony, so they make like the 1.5 crop, and they also make the 2.0 micro four thirds crop here. Maybe the outer ring isn't, it's not being used on this camera. Maybe if I put that filter on a Sony 1.5, we would see the vignette, but because with the GH5 it's cropping down to 2 times crop, we're not even using the outside circle, so we can't see it. And if that's the case, I don't care. I'm happy because it's not affecting my shots at all, no matter how I adjust things. There's no vignette, there's no shadows creeping in. And to prove it, give me a second and I'll throw it on so you can see. Get a good look at the shot here. I'm gonna screw this onto the lens now. So the image is gonna be a little bit darker. That's to give you an idea how the ND filter works. You can see it's darker now. So you'd be blocking out some of the sun. And here's a piece of paper. So you can see in the corners, try to ignore any shadows and brightness on the paper, but just basically, as you can see, there's no black circle. You can't see the filter inside. And I did not crop this shot at all. There is no, this over here is just shadow. That's just shadow from the way the light's hitting the paper. But there is no vignetting at all. So for those of you that have some panty lenses already, 58 mil, like maybe the 12 to 35 for instance, and maybe you got a bunch of filters for them and you're like, this is great, this guy's talking about this lens, but what am I gonna do with all my filters? Get the 58-67 step down ring, and I think you'll be fine. So that's awesome. increases the value of the lens if you already have those filters. I was pretty happy about that. Okay, so another thing that I noticed that I want to talk about was the way that it focuses. Obviously, everybody knows that continuous autofocus for the GH5 is like the bane of a GH5 owner's existence. But I had some interesting results with the continuous autofocus. Well, with autofocus in general, but it was more so with tracking with the Sigma over the Panasonic lenses. So here's my observations. Firstly, I think the Panasonic lens initiated focus a little bit faster. But what I've been noticing about the Panasonic lens is that once it goes to focus, it kind of does this weird in and out thing. It'll focus like 90% and then defocus and then focus the last sort of 10%. So it kind of has like a, blurry sharp effect on it. Where the Sigma, albeit maybe a little bit slower than that initial focus, it doesn't do the double thing. It just is a little bit slower going from blurry sharp and then stops, done. The idea that it doesn't kind of double hunt or double focus is great, because if you're recording video while it's doing that for the continuous aspect of it, I mean, you'd like to see it just focus in on something and then be done with it. You don't want to see it go and focus in on something, then defocus and focus again. That really breaks the effect. I really like that, and I would consider that an upgrade even if it is a fraction slower. As far as, controlled focus, like when you tell it to focus, I have this set up on manual focus, for instance. So if I click on the back wall here like that, it's fast. So now I'm out of focus and now I'm gonna put it on my face. I mean, it's as fast as anything else. This is so I'll just put it on the back wall again, to the wall, and then back to me now. So what's that? 3/4 of a second, full second? I mean, that's as fast as you're gonna need it for, if you're taking photos, it's like, snap it, right? So, and for video, that's way faster than you're ever really gonna need it, because you're just setting up your shot. So, obviously, continuous autofocus isn't something you can rely on that much in the GH5 in the first place, but I do think the Sigma makes it maybe a little bit better, And then the value is great. It comes in less expensive than I would say, like the closest equivalent would be Olympus's. Olympus has a 17mm f1.8, and that's usually around 650 Canadian. This lens comes in around 550 Canadian. The Sigma, and it's faster. It's a 1.4 instead of 1.8, so it's like 2/3 of a stop faster. The build quality is great. It comes with a hood. Usually you don't get, not all Olympuses usually come with a hood. It's dust proof, splash proof. You get a 7-year warranty. It's $550 Canadian. I mean, I think it's actually $579.95 retail right now. I've got links in the description for all this stuff, for the lens, for the variable ND that I used, for the new light, all that stuff is in the description. And I recently switched over to start using kit now, so you can see all my regular, all the time gear if you click on that kit link below in the description. But I'll put specific links for the individual products we talked about here. But I think the value in this lens is outstanding. So if you're planning on getting one, use my links below, because they're affiliate links. So anything that you buy from Amazon or whatever through those links or through my kit links, they go to support this channel, and I'd really appreciate it. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was useful. If it is, make sure you give it a like, and if you didn't think it was useful, go ahead and hit the dislike button twice. All right, I'm done.